If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers. Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. In this episode, we have the honor to meet with David Cravit and Larry Wolf, the authors of the new book, SuperAging, Getting Older Without Getting Old, to discuss the 7 A's of aging, how boomers have reinvented aging, and what this means for aging well. So I'd just like to welcome you both, David and Larry, to the Aging Well podcast. As we start off, I'd like you just to tell us a little bit about yourselves. And David, why don't you go first?
Okay, well, I'm originally a career ad guy. In fact, Larry was my first ever boss in advertising decades and decades ago in Toronto and in Buffalo and in New York State, where he had offices. So, and then I became a partner in a ad agency in Toronto. We wound up expanding into Chicago. So I spent my career there, then became a consultant, and now I'm a executive with a large media company in Toronto that specializes in the quote unquote older market. I'm also an executive with CARP, which is the Canadian AARP. I'm on their board. And SuperAging is my third book. I've written a couple books about how the baby boomers have reinvented aging. That was more about media and imagery and stuff. And this is the first one that's on this theme, collaborating with Larry. And we're looking forward to creating this as a brand and building this up into a brand that becomes the hub of a whole information, audience information ecosystem, I guess you could say. So that's our plan. Over to you, Larry.
Thank you, David. Well, like David, my background is advertising, and my specific expertise is in new product branding and marketing. And I should mention that both David and I are super agers, so we know the topic as practitioners as well as communicators. Anyways, David and I worked together, I think it was over 50 years ago. I started a small agency in Buffalo, New York, and we couldn't get good people who moved to Buffalo, so we opened a second office in Toronto, Canada, and Toronto became the tail that was wagging the dog. And that grew and expanded, and ultimately we ended up with 7 offices. We're in New York, Toronto, Cleveland, Buffalo, Rochester, Chicago, and Atlanta, and we worked on new product branding for a number of Fortune 500 companies. I sort of joke, if they ever do my biography or if I do a memoir, it'll probably be called From Super Moist to Super Aging. And Super Moist is a cake mix brand I created for General Mills. It would be over 50 years ago, and I think it's still on the market. And that was one of my first major international clients. And David and I saw the opportunity to positively brand aging and create an information resource where we unify everything with a brand concept that gives people really a positive plan, not only to live longer, but to have a great quality of life as they age in their 80s, 90s, and we hope well beyond. That's my background. So back over to you.
How did you get interested in aging?
Well, I'll kick that off. I was following aging originally. Let's separate aging and longevity. So I was following aging originally as a marketer and as a baby boomer. So I am your classic baby boomer. I'm born right at the beginning of the baby boom. So I am your 10-year-old kid watching Saturday morning cartoons in the 1950s. I'm the teenager with rock and roll. I'm of the generation that became hippies and then without even batting an eye became yuppies. Went from rebels to capitalists with, weekend, suddenly we're yuppies. So at every stage of life, the baby boomers uh, were the rock going through the python. We were the largest cohort. So whatever we did, all the marketers and all the ad people wanted us at whatever age we were. Now all of a sudden we hit 50-ish, 60-ish, the turn of the century, if you will. And um, all of a sudden, we're of an age where traditionally the marketers didn't want that age group, but we were still big. We were still dominant. We had no intention of getting off the stage. We didn't see any reason why we should morph into our grandparents and become old and passive. So before we even get into longevity or aging well, which is your purview, the boomers themselves were saying, the hell with the old version of old. In fact, the first book I wrote was called The New Old. Just as a branding thing, we're youthful, we're with it. They were running around America in the year 2002 with bumper stickers saying, I'm spending my kid's inheritance. It was cool to keep going and to stay in the spotlight. Plus, I admit, as a boomer, it's a very type A generation. It's the first generation to be called the me generation. Um, so I wrote on this as almost a cultural marketing, advertising thing about how the boomers were redefining it. Fast forward to, hey, wait a minute, now you add longevity into it. And so I became interested in it's not an accident that a 65-year-old might have, hey, wait a minute, maybe 20 years to go, 30 years to go, longer. So I got interested in that topic with Larry because we were both kind of doing that. And we said, there's a big sea change going on here. There's a revolution going on because people are living longer. So your theme of age well, yes, but it's also because you just have that much more time to go. So the possibilities for realizing aging well is really worth doing when you got 20 or 30 years to play with instead of 10 years to play with.
I should add one thing to David's background. David is the go-to authority on aging in Canada. If a media, TV show, radio show wants to comment on aging, David is one of the first go-to guys. I think he's on radio once a week, actually, talking about
From
aging
that, yeah,
topics.
and from that sociological branding. I mean, I'm not a doctor. I'm not but that's it. Yeah, Larry's right. So we both looked at it that way. Because we saw what was happening around us.
Larry, how about yourself?
Well, again, it's such a great opportunity. The other thing that hit us is there's so much going on with medical research or research and autonomy in so many areas. There's such a plethora, such a great amount of information. We thought there was a need, to go beyond diet and exercise and to give people a resource that put everything together, where we combine the what we call the seven essentials of super aging, all of which are synergistic, all of which work together and are mutually reinforcing. And we thought, corollary to this, we need to give people a working plan, really in a system to organize all the new information that we're being overwhelmed with in all these areas. So we saw a really exciting opportunity, which was being unrealized. And we thought it was both a great entrepreneurial opportunity and an opportunity to do some real good in the world.
Sounds good. Before Corbin chimes in with the next question, I wanted to just add that I am at the end of the baby boomer era. I think I'm like one of the last years. I was born in 1963, and I think it's like 1964, 65 or something like that, which is the end. So kind of seeing that full spectrum of how the boomers are kind of impacting our futures.
Exactly.
Well, you're very, very young. You're just at the beginning of your super aging future.
I'm not even close to starting to be old yet. And I feel like, and I think what you guys are trying to capture is exactly what we're trying to approach with this podcast is that aging, we talk often on the podcast that aging begins at conception, that we are aging from the moment we are born.
Yes.
And how we choose to age is really up to us. And so, as I approach my 60th birthday at the end of this month, and this will probably be aired after that birthday, I have a lot of fitness goals that I want to, just PRs in my lifting and things like that I want to do at 60 just to show my students that, hey, 60 is just a number.
But to our point, where we would reinforce that is to say that everything you want to do and everything you advocate was valid 15 or 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But 15 or 20 years ago, you were saying, I can get you from 65, which is the traditional age of retirement, to your last day on earth, which is maybe 75, 77, 78, maybe 80. Why not spend those last 15 years healthy and aging well? Exactly. But now we come along and say, hey, wait a minute, what if it's not 15 years? What if it's 30 years? What if it's 35 years? So all the more reason to do what you're doing, but also all these other topics that now start coming in, like employment and how you're going to pay for it all and where you're going to live and how you're going to be independent. And so it's a holistic, the lens needs to be wider is what we're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks, gentlemen. So David, you mentioned that a lot about boomers. And you mentioned that it was more of a cultural thing, but can you dive in a little bit deeper on how boomers are reinventing aging?
Well, I think that even before longevity, boomers refused to be. Let's take a look at the classic tropes or the classic attributes of aging. You had, number one, the idea of relative helplessness. You had the idea that there wasn't much time left to go. Yes, that time might as well be spent being healthy. So for sure, what you guys are all about, but there's not much time left to go. We had all of the political parties saying, retire with dignity, the kind of vacuous looking, helpless looking, white haired person with the kindly younger person helping them, a gentle glide path to the finish line, which wasn't that far away. Now the boomers come along and they say, the hell with all that. We're still active. We're still vital. There's books about sex. Did you know that the highest percentage of STD in percentage terms among baby boomer women? There's gray divorce. There's women led by women again saying, you know what, the kids have grown up. I never liked you that much anyway. I'm out of here. And the previous stereotype was, I'm done at 50. God forbid hubby doesn't run off with the bimbo secretary. I got nothing left as a woman. Now they've got sex lives and they had cougar websites, for heaven's sake. Who created the cougar websites? Baby boomer women. So it was a refusal to act helpless. It was a refusal to be passive. It was a refusal to sit back and accept the kindness of strangers, as it were. So it was culturally, attitudinally very active, but it wasn't super aging yet because now take that attitude, now apply it to 20, 30-year ramp. Holy mackerel, my goodness, what have we got now? So that's kind of how the cultural thing morphed into the longevity thing, if that makes sense to you.
I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more. What are the 7 A's of aging and how are they helping us live longer?
Okay, Larry, we want to kick that one off?
I will.
I just talked for a long
Well,
time. I think. Yep.
the most critical of the 7 A's really is attitude. There's all sorts of research that indicates a positive attitude, both about aging and about your own ability to age well. Really inculcates longevity. I mean, the research indicates that people with positive attitudes outlive significantly those that don't have positive attitudes. The second critical variable is awareness. Just so much is going on today with medical science, with all sorts of very interesting research at a cellular level, all sorts of new treatments for various cancers. So, whatever conditions one incurs while they're aging, there's many new and exciting things going on. So it's really critical to be aware of medical developments that can affect you, the developments that can affect your autonomy. The quality of your longevity. So the first two, attitude awareness, sort of frame the other 7 A's. Also, critically important, the third essential is activity. A lot of the stuff that you folks have so effectively covered. Just the basic fundamentals of diet, exercise, lifestyle. Also, taking control of your own medicine, not really delegating it passively to the doctor, but really being an active participant in the management of your own health care, your own life. Fourthly, is achievement. We have a wonderful article on our website about a 100-year-old doctor who unbelievably is still practicing. And what he says is retirement is the energy of longevity. So activity, yeah, yeah.
The enemy of longevity. Yeah.
Achievement is just, I mean, it's just whether it's your primary career, whether it's doing something new, whether it's volunteering, just ongoing achievement is absolutely critical. Next, attachment. Relationships are so important. So we talk about many new ways to expand your relationships. Digital technology has created a lot of new a lot of new opportunity. Also important is autonomy. The more independent you are, the more directly you're in charge of your own destiny, the more you control your own environment, the better the quality of life, and probably the longer you live. And there's such extraordinary things now happening with AI, with robotics, that it's really possible, live at home even with various infirmities. We have an interesting post, I think, in our social media where we have a picture of a little cottage, and the headline is "The Hospital of the Future." So really, autonomy absolutely critical. And lastly, things to avoid. Ageism, which I'm painfully aware of. I've turned 80 already, and I'm as healthy as an ox and feel great. But as in my environment, I see all the time ageism of one form or another. So basically, that covers the 7 A's, and in the book we cover all of the A's in depth. And I think what's so valuable about the book is we give people an operational methodology. We give them a working plan so they can apply this to their own lives fairly readily.
Well, also in the book, you talk about default aging versus super aging. Can you explain that a little bit to the listener, what the difference is between those?
Default aging is the model of aging that we all grew up with and which still dominates politics, culture, education, the way we look at things. And that says that at 65, which we use as the traditional age of retirement in North America, where government pension plan, Social Security kicks in. So under default aging, at 65, you're going to be dead in 10 years, 12 years. And for sure, I want medical care. For sure, I want those last 12 years to be pain-free, disease-free if I can. But that's all I got. And therefore, the first thing is there's not much time left to do anything. I'm not going to start a whole new career here. I'm very reliant on the money I've accumulated. So in the financial front, you hit the workforce in your young 20s, you work 40 years, you cash out at 65, you only need enough money for 10, 12 years. So your whole investment strategy, your financial strategy, the entire financial consulting industry is predicated on that. Government pension plan is that. Seniors aren't going to be entrepreneurs. They're not going to be investors. They're not going to be doing much. They're going to be just on that gentle, we hope it's gentle, we hope it's pain-free ramp to the finish line, which ain't that far away. And that still dominates. It's still considered an anomaly for someone like me and Larry to be working. Well, you're past 65. I'm in my 70s. What are you still working for? You're supposed to be retired. That model is sort of lingering on, even though it has long since been rendered obsolete. Super aging says that when you hit 65, you have the potential for 20 years, maybe 20, not everybody. I mean, let's face it, we're general, we're painting in broad sweeps here. And some people, God forbid, get diseases in their 30s and 40s, and somebody gets hit by a car. So we're not talking literally everybody, but the pendulum is swinging toward a 65-year-old can look forward to 20, 30, maybe for the fastest growing age group in percentage terms are centenarian. And scientists are talking realistically about 100 being no big deal, maybe 120. Maybe not, but the fact that so much research and development's going into that makes it so. All of a sudden, I've got a super aging lens which says, wait a minute, the period from 65 to 95, never even mind if you don't make it to 100, I got a 30-year chunk of life now that needs to be looked at as a totally different way. It's not just a brief ramp to the finish line where not much can happen. It's a whole new phase of life where all kinds of new things can happen, entirely new things, new careers, new perspectives, new differences. And from a point of view of living that long, playing into what Larry said and combining it with your area, let's just take one example. If I'm going to live 30 years longer and I don't want to go in a nursing home, I got to stay at home. Okay, but what do I need to do to be healthier, which is where you guys come in. But how do I find out about all the new technology I'm going to need in that new home? Do I even know that leaders in the medical industry are saying that the hospital of the future is the home? Do I know all about the new sensors and the passive sensors that are going to email my doctor all of my vitals in real time 24/7, and that outpatients are going to be at home where they used to be in a ward? Do I even know about that? How do I find out about that? Who's going to pay for that? Maybe I need a whole new financial strategy, because in default aging, your financial strategy is conservative. You cannot take a hit because you've only got 10 years to go. You can't play the stock market. You got to have this. But now if you've got 20, 30 years, maybe you can take on a little bit more risk. So everything's being turned upside down by this longevity revolution, which is just getting started. And our thesis is that super aging says that those 30 years, 40 years maybe, is a huge chunk of your life to be looked at in a positive way and not just in a survivalist way.
So you mentioned more and more people are living to be the age of 100 or possibly over 100 years old. And you also mentioned, you just talked about technology. In your book, you talk about people that are living, right around that 100-year mark and how they're living in the blue zone. And then you also kind of talk about biohacking as well. To me, when I read that, I feel like that's a nature versus nurture scenario. Do you think that has any effect with the outcome of default aging versus super aging, of people living either in that blue zone or having the ability to have that biohacking?
Well, I want to be careful about biohacking because we did put in all kinds of caveats in the book. And one of the things we're saying, and I'll let Larry expand on this, is it's not any one method. It's the sum total of all the wisdom that's out there. It's how, I mean, all these things are happening at the same. So it's not that new prescription drug, that new robot. It's all of them at once. There's so much going on that it's inevitable that we're going to be extending this, our lives. I read an article today, just today, brand new, that Moderna said that as a result of what they're learning from COVID, they think that by 2030 there's going to be vaccines against cancer. Let's say they're wrong. Okay, next story. What's the next story? But the sum total of all of that, there's so much going on. There's so many
Amazing.
billions of dollars being thrown at all this stuff. So biohacking to me is not, oh, that's the new answer to everything. Not at all. Not at all. But it's the totality of it, which is why our second A is awareness. How do you keep track of all this stuff? How do you, we have a few systems and a few very simple methods, but you have to, there's so much more to know is what we're saying here.
Yeah, and your comments about the blue zone cultures were really interesting, and all the things they have in common. And really, when you look at the 7 A's, they're all active. They all have purpose. They work at something. They have relationships. So even though they're not perhaps modern cultures in the sense of living in New York or Toronto or Florida, there's a commonality of purpose, of lifestyle. They're even, with the exception of the Seventh Day Adventists, which is interesting. They're even all moderate drinkers. They all like a good glass of wine with dinners. I guess is an interesting aside. Yeah, and there really is so much, as David says, going on medically. One very interesting thing is the work that Sinclair is doing at Harvard, I guess, where he's reversed cellular aging in mice. Now, whether this will apply ultimately to human aging, who knows? But it's just one example of all of the leading edge research that's going on in longevity and lifestyle related areas.
So you guys mentioned baby boomers are kind of revolutionizing the aging process, but in the book, you talk about generation differences in the approach to aging. What are these differences and how will they affect how these generations age?
Well, I think we talked about differences in the generations period, but not necessarily approach to aging, because in our experience, the people we know who, let's say, are in their 40s or 50s are starting to become aware of the topic now. And they will age into a world where all these tools and techniques and technologies will be much more established and much more. So the menu of the tools you'll be able to deploy. I like to think of the baby boomers as the advanced scouts. We're going through the jungle with the machete, carving the trail. We're changing attitudes. We're discovering new ways. We're refusing to age the way our parents and grandparents did, paving the way. But what will be commonplace? So to jump cut, I have a 6-year-old grandson. When he grows up, having 3 careers will become normal. It won't be, oh, you've retired. What are you going to do now? It'll be, I got 120 years to play with. Of course, it's going to be all different. Generally speaking, the pressure point right now that I see, that we see in the generations, and it's temporary, is on retirement and on money. The market needs more workers. There's not enough workers. Older workers are being called back into the workforce. China's population is going to decrease dramatically in absolute, they're not just going to grow at a slower rate, it's going to actually decrease. So there's some crises going on about where we're going to get the money. There are affordability crises around housing. So there are some clashes of the generations, but not necessarily about aging, but about how are you going to pay for all this? Can the healthcare system afford this as it spends more on older people? So there are some conflicts, but I don't see the generations responding to aging that much differently. I think they're responding to other social problems differently, but I don't see the younger generations rejecting this, with the possible exception of not really realizing how much their financial planning has to take this into account just yet. And they're not thinking ahead to, gee, how am I going to pay for $100,000 worth of fix-ups to my home 40 years from now so that I can age in place? It's an urgent topic right now for the baby boomers. It's a less urgent topic for obvious reasons to younger generations.
Yeah, I think I start to see a lot more, especially my students and in the college population, that there's actually even a little bit more pessimism that there's even going to be the existence of a world for them to age into. And so they have, again, very different concerns that we might have, those of us that are, 60, 70, 80 or older. And we often talk on the podcast about universal health care versus universal health. And I
well
speak this
put.
with my friends.
Well put.
And it's one of the things I really push a lot within my students and stuff. And so how do you think these generational differences are going to affect our approach to these? And what effect will these approaches have on how we age well as we go forward?
Well, what I see from younger people, which it really encourages me, is more political awareness. I see a lot more environmental concern. I look at my grandkids, for instance, who are quite young. They're very environmentally aware, as are a lot of their peers. So I think really the hope of fighting all of these climate, all of these environmental issues rests with our young people. And I think the young people are much more concerned about gun violence. Obviously at the reproductive age, women's right to control their own bodies. So I'm very encouraged by young people. I think they'll age better and make a bigger contribution than our generation.
But as an add-on to that, and it's covered in the book because the book doesn't deal directly with political things, these political issues. But I think one of the themes in the book that is playing itself out is the transformation of healthcare from the consumerization of healthcare and the patient as an active player rather than a passive recipient. One of the endorsers of our book, the person that put a comment on our front cover endorsing it, is Sir Muir Gray, who was the former chief information officer of the British National Health System, a brilliant doctor and expert on healthcare systems. And he talks about a future in which the control is going to pass from the clinician to the patient, and the patient is going to be demanding better. And I think at all age groups, this new script is being written as we speak, whereby the sort of passive acceptance, certainly of the baby boomer parents. Now think about healthcare, which is in your area. Healthcare used to be entirely transactional. You got sick, you went to a doctor who was God. The doctor told you what was wrong and how to fix it. You got better. You didn't go to the doctor till the next time you got sick. So it was transactional. And the healthcare systems in the Western world, generally speaking, are based on that model. And that model is changing because we're starting to pay attention to the topics you guys are talking about wellness and fitness and universal health. So a sick care model, which is what our healthcare system is, needs to transfer into a healthcare model where there's better information, better participation. I'm not talking about the patients trying to do their own, complex brain surgery or taking over from better trained clinicians, but the idea that the patient should know little or nothing, the doctor will dispense. And these are observations we're making. You can question them and say they're not a good thing, but it would have been unthinkable 20 years ago to have a website where you could rate your doctor. It would have been unthinkable to have a website like Patients Like Me that has 800,000, I think it is, people talking to each other about their medical conditions and what they're doing about it, mostly chronic conditions, and they're very careful. They're not doing complex diagnoses. But there's an information explosion in healthcare where the patients are saying, wait a minute, I've got the right to step up here and demand better. So I think that's what's going to fix it, is that a greater participation by people in health at all levels, rather than, I don't want to think about my health till I get sick. Then I'll go to a doctor. Then I don't have to think about my health anymore. That's all going away now,
Yep.
which I think you'd be glad about, because it's kind of what you're preaching, I think, in your.
Yeah, that's definitely what I preach. And I do have some concerns as we look at the growing rates of obesity in the country and, the symptoms of metabolic syndrome and just the cost that has for the healthcare system. And I don't think we have quite gotten to the point as a society that understands that the more we allow that to grow, the more it's going to cost us, even if we engage in our healthcare system. In fact, it's going to cost us more when we engage in our healthcare system because we have more ailments and things like that are going to
people that are not healthy to be. No, you're completely correct. But I think we have to separate observing something that's going on that may be partly good, partly bad. So, for example, I've made numerous presentations to doctors, MDs, groups, the association of the, and they all come up to me and they tell me that with a kind of an ironic smile and sometimes with a deep, deep, angry frown, that their biggest competitor is Dr. Google. So they got all these hordes of unqualified people. I'm a layman, I don't know, looking up shit on Google and getting the wrong idea, coming into their office, waving some printout and challenging their diagnosis. Now that is occurring. So I'm comfortable to say that's occurring. It's there. Don't pretend it's not there. I'm not comfortable saying, oh, thank God it's happening. But I'm saying that all of this tumult, all the unreasonable part of it, the reasonable part of it, there's an awareness that we have to take responsibility, more responsibility. We had the second A awareness. In Canada, for example, our single payer healthcare system is in total, complete meltdown. It cannot cope. And so people are stepping up and saying, I've got to look after myself because I can't even get a doctor, let alone pay for a doctor. It's complete chaos. So people are being forced to step up. So all of these are trends that we are observing. We're not necessarily endorsing them all. But out of that tumult, and you're quite right in calling it that, comes a better model, and that better model will be a more proactive partnership between the clinician and the patient, where both of them are stepping up and being more active in monitoring overall wellness and not just transactional treatment of sickness.
I think that's well put. What other information from the book would you like to share for us listeners?
There's so much in the book I think that is so useful and so valuable. In working the book with David, I personally learned so much that really has affected my life. It's David, you take a crack at it.
I think there's two things. I think that we try to open up people to the health part for sure. We have experts in the book that we quoted. We tried to be a kind of a distillation of some, but it's not primarily health driven. We try to integrate the other topics into health. So even as I'm following your podcasts about, and I particularly like the one about better habits, better health habits, you had several on that theme. Okay, but what about the money? What about my plan for the future? Gee, I didn't even know there was such a thing as a retirement coach. That didn't even exist maybe I should talk to someone. It's good to be optimistic in general, but can I teach myself how to be optimistic? And then can I connect that to an actual plan? What do I want to do with this gift of 30 more years? Gee, I don't know. Oh, you mean there's people who can help me work that through? So it's the broadening of the lens is the first thing I think I want to get across. I would like to get across that and that makes your field much more powerful because it integrates it with the other aspects of life. And then the second thing I would like to emphasize, and put in a little plug for our website here, superaging.info, is that the topic is constantly growing and dynamic and expanding. So stay in touch with us, keep up to date. We
And
will have,
subscribe to our newsletter.
yeah, we have a newsletter. We will have links on our website under a resources section, which is being finalized now because our book goes live in 2 weeks, which will include great resources, including this podcast. You need to work at it. You've got those 30 or 40 years, but you need to be busy and work at it and be informed and be aware and see it as a dynamic process because it's changing all the time.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been teaching very recently with my students is I've been trying to emphasize this phrase, biomechanical psychosocial, that everything that we do and the interaction between all the different fields related to aging well, or whatever we would consider, how the umbrella term, super aging, whatever we want to call our goals to be healthier and better, all require an understanding of the biology, the physiology. Originally, it was just biopsychosocial, which I've heard from several different medical professionals that use that. But our biomechanist at Western Oregon, Lex Gidley, she said, no, it's biomechanical because it's how we move and all that. Sure. And so really emphasizing that is what we need to be considering. We can't just, as exercise physiologists or exercise scientists, consider the biological or the mechanical side of it. People have their own individuality, their social environments, their psychology, what's going on in their lives. And so it is a very complex thing that needs to be addressed. And, I was really kind of excited reading the book because I saw, much more of those topics being presented. We do tend to lean a little bit more toward the exercise side of this because I think we've had a lot more listeners that have been asking questions about that. But when we originally started, it was, we want to approach the financial side, the mental side of it, the social side of it. And, so it's very, very important that we understand that this is a multifaceted issue as we go forward.
If I could just get to that exact topic to reinforce that, one of the A's, being achievement or accomplishment is that it's thrive, not just survive. So if I do everything I need to do in the biomechanical fitness, I got that time period now. Imagine what I could contribute. Imagine what new things I could actually achieve, quite apart from keeping my heart pumping every day, which is vital, obviously. Yeah, but obviously. Okay, now I've got that better health. Am I just living out my days? Some will, we're not knocking it, but imagine what I could accomplish or I could create or new things I could do with that time. And that's part of it too.
So what are you both doing personally to age well? Who wants to go first? Want to go Larry first?
Yeah.
Sure. Well, a bunch of things. First, great relationships. I have a marvelous wife, great kids, grandkids, good friends. So I enjoy good relationships. Secondly, I love work. So I work at this. I do some other marketing communications, consulting. Thirdly, you're absolutely right about biomechanics. So I'm quite rigorously into exercise. I have some eye issues, so I'm unfortunately off the tennis court and ski hill. But I swim. I'm on my Peloton regularly, so a lot of aerobics. I do yoga and a whole stretching exercise routine to maintain my flexibility. I have a marvelous Tai Chi master, so I am now into the. I just started about a month ago, and I find it quite challenging. I'm now into the broadsword, so I'm learning as part of my Tai Chi how to do all the sword exercises, and it's interesting. One of the key things we interviewed Allison Secular, who deals with mental health for Baycrest, and one of the key point she makes is how critical as you age to learn new things, to develop new skills unrelated to what you're doing historically. So that's great. Now I love to eat, and I love good wine, and it's all good as long as you maintain rigorous portion control. So and it all sort of melds together, in an overriding feeling that life is wonderful. So I enjoy what I do. I live in a very beautiful place on the water in Florida, and it's life is good. I'm very motivated to keep it that way.
Sounds good. David?
That sums me up. David, take
Well,
on.
I'm not nearly in Larry's league when it comes to exercise. I'm ashamed to admit I do exercise. I go for I go for long walks is my main thing. I walk regularly. I'm following the advice in the book in trying to do exercise snacks all day long. I don't go to the gym, but I do, whether it's push-ups, or whether it's that exercise of standing on one leg, for balance and stretching. So, but I'm much less systematic, I confess, than Larry. I might be a little bit complacent if I was ruthless with myself, in that my all of my parents, grandparents had insane longevity, well into their 90s. So maybe I'm thinking that it's just going to fall into my lap, and that's wrong. But I'm not. I don't have as diverse a range of exercises. My writing is my main thing. I'm very, very committed to building up SuperAging, to turning that into something, and to also keep a consulting practice going. I'm blessed with a very happy home life and good, wonderful wife and children. And I work collaboratively with my wife on this, and kids and grandkids. And then for my mind expansion things, I've always been a little bit of a musician buff, wannabe, mediocre on my best day, but I do dabble around with the 5-string banjo a little bit, and try to keep that going. And I'm also relearning Hebrew, which I used to be able to read and write quite fluently. So I'm going back and relearning that, in the same spirit that Larry said, learn something that you're not familiar with. So, and I'm a cryptic crossword junkie too. So I try to dabble at a few little things that way.
Well, I think, we talk a lot of like baby steps, or,
Yeah.
Really that snacking, you talk about with exercise, should apply to really all aspects of what we are doing as we age, in the attempts to age well. I talk a lot about opportunity costs, and we have this 24-hour day. What do you do with it? And whatever you do is going to take away from something else. And so if exercise is our only focus, then we do lose out on some of the other, the spiritual, emotional, social, intellectual type of stimuli that we can apply to ourselves. And so it's important to really have that balance. And I liked in the book, the chapter talks about make fitness and exercise a part of your SuperAging program, and you really emphasize just really the simplicity of it all, just walk, strength train, squat. And, it's not, there's nothing really that complicated about it. And we don't have to do a lot in order to maintain at least enough muscle mass to be able to be functional. And the more functional we are, the more we are able to maintain it. And so we should have the time to be able to do the other things that we enjoy by balancing our lives a lot more. So I appreciate the balance that you both bring to this.
Thank you. Yeah. I'm heavily influenced by what I can do as I go along all day long. So I keep a set of resistance bands handy, and I can do curl ups or like just while sitting there, do 10 of them. So it's a little bit unsystematic, but I do build it into every single day. So that's my approach to it.
That's great. I love that. Anything else to add? One thing that we generally like to do in the kind of informational or the podcast description is to share any links to how people can connect with you both. So are there any special ways that our listeners can connect to the both of you and to your Aging Well information?
I think the website, Larry, right? SuperAging.info.
And we'll include a link to that.
Yeah, and that's where they would find us.
Okay. Yeah, then they can communicate with us.
They can buy the book through there. They can do everything.
And buy the book and subscribe to the newsletter. So really the key is just logging on to the superaging.info website.
Okay, great. And the book comes out, I believe it's the 25th of April that
it's there now. You can pre-order it now. It's been printed, but the official date, whatever that means, is April 25th. Yeah.
We would both strongly recommend the book to anybody that's interested. I think it's a good supplement to the Aging Well podcast, and hopefully we're a good supplement to your book. Corbin, do you have any other questions or things to add?
No. Thanks for joining us, gentlemen. I really like the book. I really like the questions. David, I like how when we were asking questions, I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, it's almost like he's pulling the answers directly from the book, like almost verbatim off the page. So it was really, really good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking to you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Well, thank you both for joining us. And we hope that both you two and the listeners will continue to we should say super age well this week.
Right. And I think we'd like to stay in touch too and see what we can do to promote each other's ideas.
That sounds great. So maybe we'll have you on again as the next book comes out and as the website grows. And again, we appreciate it, and we will talk to you both soon.
All right.
Super.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you both
so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well.